Luca had only ever heard him speak in this stiff yet gentle tone a few times, and it always meant one thing. Rollo scoffed. Luca stumbled on his words, knowing he'd said too much. Luca became instinctively angry in response. Both boys were now shouting across the distance. Rollo's tone changed to a calm, yet more intense anger. The words hung in the cold night air. Rollo's stomach dropped, knowing he'd crossed a line. But it was too late. Luca dug through his old stuff, not even sure what he was looking for. Gran cooed gently from the hallway. Luca just wanted to be alone. He waited to hear the sound of the front door closing. Luca dozed off again. Luca still couldn't bring himself to go out. Besides, if he ran into Rollo, he'd have to actually confront the situation. The Adventures of Hank Atomic. Luca carefully opened the cover and began to read. Rollo had received it for his birthday, a special hardcover edition with behind-the-scenes commentary and bonus art. Rollo cherished it, but asked that Luca keep it at his house. Luca wasn't sure if it was because Rollo didn't trust himself with it, didn't trust his sister around it, or just wanted an excuse to come hang out at Luca's more often. Whatever the reason, Luca didn't mind, but it had stayed right there where Rollo had stashed it ever since. Now, at the foot of his bed, Luca lost himself in the pages. He'd read it all before, but at this moment, it somehow felt sentimental. He was well into issue number 5 when he heard soft footsteps from the hallway. Without realizing it, Luca had pouted away the entire afternoon. He once again felt the weight of it all and allowed his weary eyes to close. Luca stood in a vast black expanse. He looked up at his father standing beside him. Walt was working a straw at the bottom of a fountain glass, trying to collect the last bits of milkshake. Dad, where are we? Taking a final loud gurgling sip, his father peered up from the glass. He jangled the straw playfully with a warm smile, then lifted the empty glass as if to point into the darkness. The source? Luca's eyes followed his father's gesture. In an instant, he was sitting in front of a blazing campfire. Across from him sat a large figure in a yellow hazmat suit. The figure's voice was a scratchy echo. Well, if it isn't the man of the hour, make yourself comfortable. Luca held his shivering hands over the flame to warm himself. It doesn't work that way here. Their yellow-gloved hand pointed to the base of the flame. It's a cold flame, see? Luca peered at the base of the fire. It wasn't wood that was burning. It was Beacon Pines itself. Tiny buildings, freezing and crumbling as they were consumed by flame. Luca could see small shadows moving in the burning city. People. Luca leapt to his feet. We've got to help them! The figure gave a dismissive wave of their hand. Why waste energy helping people who can't even help themselves? The figure bent down to examine the panicked crowd as they desperately tried to stop the flames. They only care about what's right in front of them. Not like us. Luca's voice was a trembling whisper. Us? The figure slowly stood up, grabbing its helmet with both hands. With a jolt and a twist, the suit emitted a gasp. A cloud of torpid mist escaped, slowly revealing the face within. Luca's own face looked back at him. Older, worn, distant. The sensation was oddly familiar, as if he'd caught his own reflection by surprise in the mirror. The doppelganger smiled. I tried to help once. He gestured towards his face. And all it got me was this. Luca staggered back. You aren't me. Luca felt a hand catch his shoulder. His father was there again, beside him. Every choice sets us on a path. This is the end of one of your paths, son. Luca watched his older self shake its head ruefully, its face twisting into a cruel grin. Welp, Dad. If you wanted him to see this, far be it from me to disappoint. Luca watched in shock as the figure took a confident step forward. and plunged into the flames. In a flash of cold light, he was gone. What does all of this mean? Luca felt a reassuring squeeze on his shoulder. Just remember, why we choose matters just as much as what we choose. Luca woke up to see a hazy figure at the foot of his bed, silhouetted in the morning sun. Luca rubbed his eyes. The kind, concerned face of his gran came into focus. Gran silenced Luca with a gentle pat on the leg. Luca gave a reluctant nod. Luca took a deep breath. Chapter 6. Through thick and thin. Despite Luca's bitterness, Gran was right. He needed to hash things out with Rollo. A big fight changes the nature of a friendship. Whether, in the end, it is for the better or for the worse, all comes down to understanding. If one is not careful, the same familiarity that builds the strongest of bonds can become the wrecking ball that shatters them. Luca emerged from seclusion, taking in the crisp festival air. But the events of the day weren't on his mind. He had to find Rollo. Roxy rolled her eyes, shaking her head. Luca looked down and kicked at the dirt. Mr. Kirk pointed to his grinning mouth. Jeff was staring into the distance with a wistful look. Jeff turned to Luca with a furrowed brow, then gave an understanding nod. For moment, the two now shared that same wistful gaze. Griffin looked away suspiciously. Kato's eyes lit with excitement. Kato straightened up and cleared his throat as if preparing to sing. Kato stared at Luca eagerly. Luca grabbed Natural Photography, Volume 5. Luca grabbed The Adventures of Hank Atomic, issue number 4, from the shelf. Luca grabbed The Adventures of Hank Atomic, issue number 5, from the shelf. Kato removed his book from the desk and replaced it with Luca's, turning on the lamp. As he slid the book under the purple light, 2 words glowed: The Adventures of Hank Atomic, issue 5. Luca clicked his tongue with recognition. Kato began flipping through the pages, stopping when he hit a glowing word. He continued flipping. Reaching the end of the book, Kato looked up. Before Luca could finish his sentence, Griffin handed him a corn dog. Luca shrugged, taking a sizable bite out of the corn dog. Luca tongued at his cheeks, feeling something rough between his teeth. He reached into his mouth and pulled out a slip of paper. He shook off the bits of corn dog to read the slip. Luca finished off the remainder of the corn dog. Lumi waved his hands around sarcastically as he began. Rollo sheepishly handed Luca the balloon. Luca threw himself at Rollo, hugging him as tightly as he could. Rollo handed Luca an unopened letter. Luca, some things are going to happen that might be difficult for you to understand. If I am honest, I hardly understand them myself. But whatever happens, I need you to know that I love you. None of this is fair to you. You have already lost so much. We both have. I wish there was a simpler way forward. But if there is, I haven't thought of it. God knows I've tried. Everything I've done, I did for you. I hope someday you can accept that. Love, Gran. Luca folded the paper into his pocket and headed up the ladder. Luca was at a loss for words, but that was fine. Words aren't always necessary. Sadly, this was untrue. A distant rumble shook the treehouse. It was not fireworks. It was something the boys couldn't possibly comprehend. Something as old and cruel as time itself. shockwave of cold tore through the room. A bitter, unfathomable chill. Before they could react, it encased them in ice. Two boys, reunited by friendship, only to be cruelly separated by a malevolence beyond reason. And so, our story ends on this melancholy scene. In a silent treehouse turned statuary, in a town brought low by its secrets, sits a pair of friends, alone, together, for the rest of time. The end. No, that can't be the ending. It simply can't. I won't accept it, and I hope you won't either. There are more endings, more possibilities. I can feel it. We are just going to have to sort through them all until we find the one that fits. Luca drew himself up and decided to take the only option they had left. Flight. He squinted down the barrel of the mission control defense cannon, aiming it through an opening in the dense tree branches. He looked up with surprise as it struck true and taut. Luca and Iggy winced as they sprinted through the thicket. The branches clawed at them, reluctant to give passage. After what felt like a marathon, Luca stopped in his tracks as they reached the clearing. What the? That was all he was able to say before Iggy slammed into his back. The boys tumbled down a steep decline and crashed with a wheezing thud on a surface as hard as ice. In fact, it was ice. Chapter 5. Signs. They stood silently, catching their breath. The sky was like sapphire. With each breath, a plume of steam escaped from Luca's lungs. Let's keep moving. Luca pulled Iggy to his feet as they gazed across a snowy terrain. The boys stared in disbelief at the sign that now clearly read, "Welcome to Beacon Pines." The fencing listened, each chain link encapsulated with a translucent layer of ice. Luca had almost forgotten the walkie-talkie he was carrying. Luca looked at Iggy with hesitation. With a resigned sigh, Luca responded. Luca winced, shoving the walkie-talkie back into his pocket. Looking down at the frozen stream, Luca could faintly see a school of minnows encased in the ice. The crunching of footsteps trailing Luca went hush. He looked back to see Iggy's face twisted with confusion. Luca peered upward at the darkening sky. He let out a long, foggy breath. Faintly, Iggy began to cry. Seeing Iggy in such a pathetic state gave Luca a sense of compassion and more than a little guilt. Luca allowed himself to collapse next to Iggy. The boys huddled together for warmth and comfort. If not for exhaustion, their minds would be racing, trying to make sense of the events of the day. As it was, all they had energy for was to sit in silence, numb. Iggy motioned sarcastically to his half-deformed face. Iggy shrugged. Iggy now wept openly. He wiped his nose with a sleeve. Luca gave a warm chuckle. Iggy cleared his throat as he wiped his eyes. Iggy arched into a wide yawn. Luca's eyelids began to slowly drift shut. That's all Luca could whisper before succumbing to sleep. Iggy snuggled in some more. The house smelled of warm bread. Luca was playing with toy blocks on the living room rug. He looked up to see his parents on the couch. His mother held his father's head in her lap. She idly stroked his hair while humming a song. A voice behind Luca spoke. "This is how you remember them, huh?" Luca turned to see his own face, the doppelganger from his dreams, still clad in a yellow hazmat suit, still carrying a look of disdain behind empty eyes. Aww, look at this perfectly cozy scene. You know, it wasn't really like this. The figure picked up a toy block and inspected it. It's amazing the facades that one can build given the right materials. Not that I blame us. These are a child's memories, all warm and fuzzy. You don't remember, do you? Lucas snatched the block from the figure's yellow-gloved hand. Remember what? The doppelganger pointed to the couch. The last day we saw him alive. The day he chose to abandon us. Luca turned to look at his father, still lounging on the couch. "That's not true. He didn't abandon us." The doppelganger waved his hand dismissively. "Everything is true here. It's just a matter of what we choose to see. Well, let me show you." The world flickered and pulsed. Luca was sitting next to his bed, listening to his heartbeat with one of his dad's stethoscopes. The doppelganger limped into the room. Now, we both know that's not how this went." He grabbed Luca's hand and guided the stethoscope to the floor. Luca heard muffled shouting, brought close by the stethoscope. It was his parents, fighting. "Do you remember what we did next?" Luca gave a slow nod and crept down the hall to peek through the banister. He could see the outline of his mother at the bottom of the stairs. "Damn it, Walt. We can't afford to get involved in this." She was scared. His father stepped forward. "What am I supposed to do? Just watch? There's a sickness in this town, and we both know who's behind it. I swore an oath to help people. I won't turn my back on them." Luca's mother grabbed Walt. She was crying, pleading. "I can't lose you." Walt calmly removed Eleanor's hand from his shoulder. "What's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong. I could never live with myself if I let Sharper get away with this." Eleanor raised her voice. "Spare me your bullshit platitudes. What about our son?" Luca flinched, dropping the stethoscope down the stairs. Walt turned with a panicked smile. "Luca, is that you, buddy?" With tears in his eyes, Luca descended the stairs. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" Walt dropped to a knee to meet Luca eye to eye. "Nothing, buckaroo. Your mom and I just got a little overexcited is all." Luca placed the stethoscope against his father's chest. His heart... "It sounded like you were going somewhere." Walt gently removed the device from Luca's ears. "Listen to me, Luca. I have some business to take care of. I'll be back in time to tuck you in." Luca hugged his father tightly. "Promise?" Walt stood up and walked to the door. He glanced over his shoulder. "I promise." With a wink and a grin, he put on his hat and strode out into the evening sun. A figure approached soundlessly from the foggy snowfall. It stood above them, lingering in contemplation. Slowly raising one hand above Iggy, it snapped out 2 brisk raps on his head. From a deep slumber, Iggy sprang up defensively. Whether it was the calming presence or the recognition that he was not in danger, Iggy felt his clenched fists lower. Luca looked up, gradually remembering his whereabouts. The figure exhaled a cloud of warm vapor. When it came to complete strangers, Iggy had trouble cobbling together an insult. Iggy huffed with gratification. Nat began to turn away indifferently. Iggy turned sharply and began to stomp off. Realizing he'd worn their patience then, Nat relented. Luca and Iggy turned around with hope in their eyes. Nat took a deep breath in. Nat exhaled slowly, then snapped his fingers. For a brief moment, Luca and Iggy let themselves believe that some great magic was about to unfold, until they opened their eyes and found themselves in the exact same place, cold and disheartened. Nat narrowed his eyes, furrowed his brow, and uttered. Luca began to laugh uncomfortably. He looked down at his feet. His eyes darted back and forth in contemplation. With a sudden pain, a thought struck him. He sprinted off into the pale distance. As Iggy turned to follow, Nat called out. Chapter 6. The Source. Nat expressed his sympathy with a shrug and sauntered off as unassumingly as he'd arrived. He'd given Luca and Iggy what they needed, and nothing more. As Luca sprinted across the snow, the events of the past few days became clearer, pieces to a larger puzzle. Rollo said he was underground somewhere, captured. Mr. Kerr tried to cover it up with lies. The clipboards were hell-bent on capturing Iggy. It all seemed to point to perennial harvest. But right now, there was one thing that Luca needed to know. Luca stopped dead in his tracks. The tree was gone, uprooted and moved, leaving a raw gash in the earth. He dropped to his knees and dug wildly at the cold snow. His numb hands hit something hard. A dry whisper escaped Luca's lips. There was no reply, just snow-covered silence. Iggy finally noticed the tears welling in Luca's eyes and the snow-covered grave. Suddenly, they heard the crunch of approaching footsteps in the snow. He bent down to scoop up a snowball and lobbed it playfully. Luca stuttered through heaving sobs. Iggy gave Luca a solid smack on the back of his head. Luca wiped his eyes with a sleeve. Iggy flashed a mischievous smile and cracked his knuckles. Iggy and Luca shared a skeptical look. Iggy darted behind a large pine and began digging furiously. He emerged holding a shoebox with a crude skull painted on its lid. Luca rolled his eyes with realization. Iggy stifled a chuckle. Iggy triumphantly raised the shoebox. Luca and Iggy inched up to the edge of the hole with bewilderment in their eyes. Arctic air breathed out of the cavern in heaving gusts. Mr. Kerr gazed down the abyss in contemplation. Kerr scratched the back of his head. His face contorted into a saccharine grin. Kerr snapped his fingers. Iggy turned to Luca with a sly glance. Iggy waved the box into the air, threatening to drop it down the hole. Iggy plucked a single bottle rocket from the box and held it up with reverence. After a long pause, Mr. Kerr flung up his hand with frustration. Mr. Kerr sighed into the frigid air. With a nonchalant flick, Iggy tossed the firework into the hole. With a growl, Kerr leapt at Iggy, crashing through Luca. Iggy tried to twist away, but in the struggle they both tumbled over the side. Luca dove forward, bracing Iggy's hand just before it slipped. His grip was made precarious by the cold, wet snow. He could see Kerr further down, clinging to Iggy's coat. Mr. Kerr gasped with insult. With a wild look in his eye, Mr. Kerr began to hum a proud melody. Luca's hand began to cramp. His voice began to crack. Luca felt Iggy loosen his grasp. Every muscle in Luca's body burned. Luca felt his hand slipping. A calm settled over Iggy's face. Iggy's voice was colder than the bitter air billowing from the chasm. Luca had no choice but to refuse Iggy's request. He tightened his grip and reached for the walkie-talkie in his pocket. A wild delight crept onto Mr. Kerr's face. "That's a good lad. Now, radio for help." Iggy begged Luca with his eyes one last time, but Luca pressed the button and called out, We need help. Mr. Kerr is in danger." It wasn't long before they were once again surrounded by clipboards. Mr. Kerr sighed with relieved frustration. "There you are. You really are a worthless lot, aren't you?" Mirror. Now, a clipboard dutifully produced an ornate ivory hand mirror, and Mr. Kerr began preening his tousled hair. "Ah, that's better. Mr. Van Horn, I applaud your sharp thinking under duress. I'll put in a good word for you with the founder. Take them away." A swarm of hands overpowered Luca. The last thing he saw before a cloth bag was pulled over his head was the defeated look on Iggy's face. The end. I think this was one of those times where doing the right thing was the wrong thing. Luca had no choice but to accept Iggy's request. With a quiet blink, Luca watched a teardrop sail down into the howling void. As his fingers slowly gave up, he met eyes with Iggy. The two silhouettes were swallowed by darkness. We have some idea what that would look like. flashed in Nat's eye. With a chuckle, Nat turned and walked west. Dumbfounded, Luca followed behind him, trudging through the snow. Every step taking him further away from everyone and everything he knew, and closer to destiny. To be continued in Beacon Pines, Pines Harder, Revenge Served Cold, Second Time's a Charm? Wait, that's it? This ends with a crummy cliffhanger just when it was getting good? I was even starting to like Iggy. No way. I refuse to be associated with some never-ending parade of sequels. Let's go back and find something more definitive.